too much enamored by the Western way of material advancement of knowledge. They're completely neglecting the treasure house of knowledge left by the sages. You gentlemen of the Western countries have seen much about material science, and yet peace is not within your control. In most cases, you may be feeling the want of peace, although you have enough materially. The basic defect of materialism remains undetected by the misleaders of India, and therefore they are not serious about going back to Godhead, the ultimate aim of life's journey.
Thank you, Vinda. Usha?
Abhay sent copies of his latest issues of Back to Godhead to the President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, along with a letter warning of the perilous fate that awaits a society conducted by asuras. Please, therefore, save them from the great fall down. Abhay letter of November 21st was outspoken. I have got the clue of going back to Godhead just after leaving my present material body, and in order to take along with me all my contemporary men and women of the world, I have started my paper Back to Godhead as one of the means to the way. Please do not think of me as something wonderful or madman when I say that I shall go back to Godhead after leaving my present material body. It is quite possible for everyone and all of us. Abhay requests His Excellency at least to glance over the headlines of the enclosed 12 copies of Back to Godhead and consider granting the editor an interview. There was immense work to be done on behalf of India's spiritual heritage, and there should be a specific Ministry of Spiritual Affairs for this purpose. I am crying alone in the wilderness at the present moment, wrote Abhay, but His Excellency never replied. In this back,
Thank you. Thank you.
He was making propaganda against the atheist view. In hope against hope, he frankly admitted that 80% of the people he met while selling Back to Godhead were atheists. Sometimes we meet gentlemen of up-to-date taste and try to make them interested in the matter of Back to Godhead. They say very frankly that they have not only no interest in such theistic subject, but also they condemn the attempt to bring back people in general to the path of Back to Godhead. According to these gentlemen, economic conditions of the Indian people deteriorated on account of their too much faith in God, and the sooner they forget everything about Godhead, it is better for them. But we cannot agree with this atheistic conclusion of such up-to-date gentlemen devoid of the sense of Godhead. Abhay argued that although independent India was now educating her citizens in godless materialism, her economic conditions were not improving. Many Indians did not even have the bare necessities of life. He cited that 120,000 were unemployed in Delhi. Some of
Thank
the
you. Purnachandra, would you like to?
Servants or some of the fortunate businessmen may feel themselves happy, but 90% of their brother citizens do not know how to meet the both ends together, and therefore the economic condition is definitely not satisfactory. He quoted former United States President Harry S. Truman as saying that national independence means that the citizens should have a comfortable life. So if that were the case, said Abhay, where was India's independence? His point was that all attempts at happiness and prosperity are unlawful as long as they fail to recognize the proprietorship of the Supreme Lord. An atheistic civilization could never produce peace. In Progressive Ambition and Unsatiated Lust, Abhay wrote, there is no dearth of money, but there is dearth of peace in the world. The whole human energy having been diverted to this money-making business, it has certainly increased the cheap money-making capacity of the total population, But the result is that such unrestricted and unlawful inflation of money has created a bad economy and has enabled us to manufacture huge, costly weapons for destroying the result of such cheap money making business. The authorities of big money making countries, instead of enjoying peace, are now engaged in making important plans as to how they can save us from the modern destructive weapons, and as a matter of fact, a huge sum of money is being thrown into the sea for making an experiment on such dreadful weapons. Such experiments are being carried out not only at huge costs, but also at cost of many poor lives, binding thereby such nations in the laws of karma.
Thank you. Fully accumulated money will find it snatched away by taxes for wars and other agents of illusionary nature in the shape of medical practitioners, lawyers, tax collectors, societies, constitutions, so-called sadhus, famines, earthquake, and many such calamities. A miser who hesitated to purchase a copy of Back to Godhead by the dictation of illusionary nature spent up 20,000 rupees for a week's almonds and died at the end. A similar thing happened when a man who refused to spend a paisa for the service of the Lord spoiled 30,000 rupees in litigation affairs between members of the home, and that is law of nature. A worker in New Delhi post office, noticing the title of the magazines a boy was sending abroad, took the opportunity to argue his atheistic opinions with a boy. You would like to?
The leader was an Arya Samaji, and he was talking to me about the paper, Back to Godhead. He raised the question, if we do our duty nicely, then what is the use of worshiping God? If we become honest, if we become moral, if we do not do anything which is harmful to anyone, if we act in this way, then what is the need of this? Because our paper's name was Back to Godhead, he was indirectly protesting. What is the use of propagating this philosophy of Godhead if we act nicely? That is the Arya Samajist's view, how to avoid God. So, I replied that if one is not God conscious, he cannot be a moralist, he cannot be truthful, he cannot be honest. This is our point of view. You study the whole world just on these 3 points: morality, honesty, dutifulness. But if he is not God conscious, he cannot continue such things. To revive all these good qualities in society, you must have to invoke God consciousness. A Delhi man, noticing a boy distributing Back to Godhead, remarked, "Where is Godhead? Can you show me God?" A boy replied to the challenge, but he also pondered a deeper reply as he moved throughout the city during the day. On returning to his room, he began an article. Where is Godhead? Is it possible to see him?
Thank you. Usha? Yes?
Chariot building in New Delhi. There is an inscription on the stone that liberty does not descend upon a people, but it has to be earned before it can be enjoyed. Actually, this is the fact, and we have seen it that much sacrifice had been rendered by the people of India before they could again Swaraj. But in before they could gain Swaraj. But in the matter of Godhead, some irresponsible people ask, where is God? Can you show me? Have you seen God? These are some of the questions put forward by some irresponsible men who want to have everything very cheap. If for attaining a temporary false sense of liberty in this material world, so much labor and sacrifice have to be requisitioned, is it possible to see Godhead, the absolute truth, so cheaply? To see God means complete liberty from the conditions, from all conditions. But is Godhead an attending orderly so that he may be present at my command? The atheist, however, demand like that, as if Godhead is his paid servant, and he thinks that Godhead is an imaginary thing, otherwise he would have appeared before us as soon as the demand to see him is made. One time, while he was walking on the secluded street, pursuing his back to Godhead duties, a stray cow, the kind commonly seen wandering the street of any Indian town or city, suddenly charged him, goring his side with her horn, and knocked him down. At first, he couldn't get up, and no one came to help him. As he lay there, he wondered why it had happened.
Thank you. Probably.
Came and the 110-degree heat made it almost intolerable to spend time out of doors. Hot, dust-laden winds blew in the city streets. Street-side hawkers closed their businesses during the day. In early May, during 112-degree heat, a man collapsed in the street and died of heart stroke. But Abhay ignored the heat and the ordinary limitations of the body. One day, while delivering back to Godhead to various addresses in the city, Abhay suddenly began reeling, half unconscious, overcome by the heat. At that very moment, an acquaintance of his, a man he had approached during his preaching, happened to be passing by in his car, and he took Abhay to a doctor. The doctor diagnosed him as a victim of heat stroke, and ordered him to rest. On June 20th, Abhay produced the eighth consecutive fortnightly edition of the year, its front page article condemning both materialist family life and false renunciation of family life. It had been almost 2 years exactly he had left his home and taken to the Vanaprastha order, and his comments on family life seemed autobiographical as well as scriptural. He quoted a statement by Prahlad Maharaj from Srimad Bhagavatam. Persons who are always
Okay, now if you want to.
persons who are always disturbed in mind with cares and anxieties of household affairs may quit off the place, which is the black hole temporary abode, family life, to kill one's self and take shelter onto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead by entering into the forest.
Admit it, the management of a family is more difficult than that of an empire. But trying to avoid family life by living in the jungle without the real spirit of renunciation was monkey renunciation. In the jungle, there were many monkeys who lived naked, ate fruits, and kept female companions. The real remedy lies in the act of accepting the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. That makes one free from all cares and anxieties of life, that makes one able to see Godhead always and everywhere. Real renounced life, therefore, was possible without going into the forest. Even if one remained in the dress of a householder, he could be freed from cares and anxieties by engaging himself in devotional service. On September 1st, United States President Eisenhower condemned the Soviets' secret testing of a nuclear bomb equal to 1 million tons of TNT and scoffed at the Soviets' claims for peace. In the Middle East, Egypt, Nasser nationalized the operation of the Suez Canal, causing an international crisis. On September 20th, 81 nations.
Thank you. 81 nations met at the United Union to form a new international agency to help tame the atom for peaceful purpose. Sorry, nations, I meant to say. A boy saw some of the headlines and heard talk of the latest news from the gentleman he visited. He frankly told them that without Krishna consciousness, the promises of cooperation by the politicians were all phantasmagoria. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had said that if only one soul could return into a pure devotee, his mission would be a success. Yet sometimes a boy became overwhelmed when he thought of how small he was, how much work had to be done on behalf of Krishna, and how difficult it was to convince even one conditioned soul.